And we are live, Bill. The button did not lie. We we are here, and we're going to be talking about Omega the Unknown. Before we get to that more specificity of what we're going to do here, how you doing, Bill? What's up with you today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you? I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about Omega, soon to be known, but Omega the Unknown at this particular point in time, and just enjoying a wonderful Sunday afternoon, evening.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because this character and this series is somewhat unique. And when they called it, or Gerber and Screens called it Omega the Unknown, there's sort of a double entendre there, because there are still things that are unknown and things that went not the way they were supposed to. But we'll get to that later.
Right.
But the creators, Gerber, Mary Screens, Mooney, I think had some input into the design.
He did.
Of Omega. So it's neat because this is one of those series that just really came out of nowhere. I mean, at this time, there were a lot of Marvel comics that were ongoing that were, had deep runs, Fantastic Four, Avengers, Spider-Man, etc. And there weren't all that many newer characters coming out in 1976, I do believe this is. So I never got this one off the rack originally, Bill. I picked this up later on because, again, money for a 11-year-old Metarog was scarce. But I'm glad I did pick it up because it is a very interesting series.
Absolutely. I think we'll kind of give our impressions throughout and specifically at the end, but I'll just say my little bit in the beginning. I thought it was a good series, not a great series. Now, there's a reason for that, though.
Agreed.
Because the concept, although different, wasn't original. It really feels like Steve Gerber didn't get his fill during Man-Thing, and he wanted to carry that over conceptually into a new series. Because really, it's been done before, how the story in most of Man-Thing was told through Richard Rory and his adventures. And Man-Thing really couldn't talk, obviously. And so sometimes you were in his thoughts, or that he would postulate on what he would be thinking. But the story was really about the characters around Man-Thing and then his interactions with them. Conceptually, this is pretty much the same thing. Now, Omega does talk a little bit in some of the later issues, but it's very similar in how the story is really told through James Michael Starling and his cast of friends and the pawn shop owner and things like that.
Yeah, Grams. Yeah, agreed. And we'll talk about that a little more. Let's get into the chat here because there's a bunch of people coming in. Of course, James Las Cruces 1971 was in here right at the beginning. Our buddy Man, a comic bookworm, who I just spent a couple days with in Washington with a great time. Wake up, Roger. I was awake. That's just Bill being Bill. Jackson Roy Kirk says, hopefully this won't be the last of these retrospectives. See what I did there?
Yeah, he's trying to use reverse psychology on us.
Yeah. That's he's a smart cookie, that guy. But I think we're on to him. Digger Jim, one of the great co-hosts there with Gary B. Thank you for coming by. Secret Crisis. The series has puzzled me to no end. Well, it may puzzle you even more after we talk about it because it's unusual in how it ended. We'll talk about that a little later. Tony Old Wolf, how are you, my friend? Great to see you here. Manny, the Hobgoblin Collector, a new guy, but somebody that you should really sub to because he is really knowledgeable about his particular niche, Hobgoblins and Spider-Man. Of course, our buddy the Gray Man from Cover Slingers is still basking in the glow.
Yeah, of winning.
Of winning there with Cap, as undeserving as it was.
True.
But anyway, let's see who else. Okay, I think that's it. Everybody's saying hi to each other. Okay, so we're gonna try to go through this one a little quicker than usual But let's start at the beginning, shall we say? Omega number 1.
There it is.
I guess I'll start, and you can sort of fill in, Bill.
Okay.
First of all, I like this cover. It's one of those covers that sort of draws you in. It tells a little bit of the story, and of course, they put in a little advertising there. You got some Spider-Man comics down there.
Yep, I like that. Yeah,
you got
the unsung Ed Hannigan.
Ed Hannigan, yeah, and is it Sinnott, Joe Sinnott, of course.
Yeah, with the inks.
Yeah, you have that character there, which is Omega. We'll talk about that later.
Sam,
and
you mean Sam, right?
Sam, yeah. And we have the Metal Man, or it's unsure if it's a robot at this point, or if it's if it has consciousness or whatever. But anyway, so we start off with the scene in a distant planet. And there's a conflagration going on, and Omega is fighting a passel of these metallic beings, whatever they are at that point, right? And he is shot and rendered unconscious, I do believe, tied up, and then he gets free, and he thinks, I have to get off this planet. So he finds, Bill, coincidentally, he finds a little rocket ship right nearby.
Yeah, amazing how that works.
And he gets in it and takes off, right? And then it sort of flashes to this young gentleman who's having, and they even show the face of Omega, and then the next panel is the face of James Michael Starling.
Correct.
And he's apparently had this vision or nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? And then his who we think are his parents come into the room, and they're very odd. They're very cold. They're not asking how he is or anything. They're saying, "Are you in pain, James Michael?" Very
analytical.
Very analytical. Very kind of cold and kind of dispassionately.
Right.
Talk to him, and he starts telling them about there was I had like this thing, like, oh, did you hear voices? And that's sort of a recurring thing going on. Did you hear any voices? And he's like, yeah, it was kind of like that. So, anyway, awkward scene there at night. And apparently the next day, he's going to start school because he's been homeschooled in the mountains of Pennsylvania, apparently.
Yeah.
So he hasn't had many social interactions. He's highly intelligent, has an incredible lexicon, but is somewhat ignorant of a lot of things that of the world, going on, etc.
Right. Socially naive.
Socially naive, yeah. Like some, YouTubers here. But anyway,
that's true.
Present company not excluded.
Self-reflection, I think they're right.
Yeah, self-reflection there, exactly. Maybe Gerber was actually self-reflecting there as well. So the next day, the two ostensible parents are driving down this mountain serpentine road, and James Michael has a kind of a vision. Says, "We're going to have an act," and mid-sentence, a truck careens into the car. The car goes off of a cliffside, bursts into flames. James Michael seems to be okay, but his father is nowhere to be found, and only the head of the mother is there, and she has electronics coming out the bottom of her head.
Right.
So we are supposing that she was a robotic android of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing she says to him is a warning. Don't listen to the voices, James Michael. Don't listen. And then she just melts away.
Correct. Right, because there's a fire from the wreck.
Yeah, right. There. I mean, obviously, it was the car was mangled and on fire. He was thrown clear.
Yeah, but he's essentially unhurt.
He is essentially unhurt.
He slips into a coma.
He slips into a coma afterwards. Right. Correct. Right. And he's taken to this clinic. Bill, apparently. Traumas of this sort are taken to clinics, not emergency rooms.
Correct.
But he said
now you know, right? You learn a little every day. Yeah.
I mean, things are a little different in Pennsylvania, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's the Barrow Clinic, and there he meets. He wakes up again. He has another kind of vision kind of thing. And at that point, he wakes up, and apparently he thinks it's like the next day, but apparently a month has
Correct.
passed.
Yep.
And doctor and the nurse, Ruth Hart, I think her name
Correct.
is there and starts to talk to him, and he's like, well, why am I restrained? And I'd like to be unrestrained. Well, let me talk to the doctor. We get this Dr. Barrow guy comes in there, and he seems to be very kind of creepy, like he's very interested in James Michael.
He's intrigued, right?
He's intrigued.
It's
he's
very
intrigued,
much
right.
a mystery that
Right.
that he would be out for a month, essentially in a coma, and then wake up seemingly in
perfect health.
seemingly well,
Yeah.
and very
very unemotional,
very mentally mature for his age,
but very unemotional. In other words, he's not asking about his parents or anything.
Correct.
He's not like upset about that or
right. And he asks pointed questions about that, and he
right.
says, "Well, I'm, sure, they took care of me, kind of
took
thing."
care of me, yeah,
everything devoid of emotional attachment,
but nothing like, oh, I really love them, I miss them, nothing like that, right? So anyway, so he, like you said, he asked questions like, they said, well, we're going to give you a sedative. He goes, well, what are the ingredients? What are the different chemicals involved and all this? Something that I think, what is he, 12 at this point?
Correct.
You normally would not ask something that.
Yes, typically wouldn't ask.
So, so that evening, I think it is, he's in his room, he's now unrestrained.
Right.
And this being comes in there and starts to crashes through the window, I believe, and starts to talk like, oh, this is like the one of the beings that we're after, and blah blah blah, right? And of course, Omega is now, apparently that month-long journey has ended. He's now on Earth, and they have some kind of symbiotic, well, not symbiotic, they have some kind of psionic relationship, but it's unclear at this point.
Correct.
So he crashes in, starts fighting and with the metal being. The metal being gets the upper hand, and he's about to, fire his phaser, whatever it is, at Omega. And James Michael is, he's obviously in high stress, but he holding his hands like this. These energy pulses come out of it, and I think he evaporates the metal being. He
blasts what we later learn is an android.
Right.
Yes.
And, there's a hole in the wall, and the room is disheveled. The doctor comes in, and he finds these brands of the Omega symbol in his palm.
The Greek letter Omega, correct.
Yeah. And so he's like, what happened? What happened?
Right. He's led to believe that James Michael has wantonly committed destruction to his room and is self-mutilating.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Exactly. He thinks that's going. Now, how he made a hole in the wall,
right? He doesn't know. Yeah.
You would think that question would be asked, because a 12-year-old normally would not have that kind of strength. Oh, and Omega, by the way, has taken off.
He took. Yes.
So there's no evidence of anybody else.
Correct.
All right. You want to take number 2?
Sure.
All right.
So for number 2, again, for almost every issue, we had the same writers: Steve Gerber, Mary Screens, and Mooney for the interior art. That's a Rich Buckler cover. So Dr. Barrow thinks that he did this, that he trashed the room. Electro, one of our baddie buddies, Electro, gets introduced in issue number 2. He witnessed the battle, and he attacks Omega, who would actually, Omega had the android.
Yeah,
so the
android starts carrying over his shoulder. Yeah.
Yes, and so Electro attacks him. Excuse me, and steals the android. Now the next day, because the doctor had lobbied the hospital board or the clinic board, saying, "Hey, can I have the money, the funds to study this kid, because he's really an enigma?" And they said no. So he asked his nurse, which I'm sure happens all the time, will you
Happens all the
take in
time.
this strange child, yes, with
Just
you
take him in.
your apartment in Hell's Kitchen that you share with one other? She said, sure, of course I will. So
Perfect environment for a kid. I'd say.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Ruth takes James Michael home with her, and her roommate Amber introduces him. And in the meantime, Omega finds some guys that are robbing a pawn shop. He fights them. He gets shot in the shoulder. And the store owner that you referred to originally as Gramps,
Yeah.
he's the pawn shop owner. He takes Omega in, treats his wound, essentially thankful that he helped him out, and he gives him a place to stay. Said, hey, you can stay here. You can help me around the shop, kind of thing. Now, Gramps likes to talk. And up until this point, Omega doesn't. Nope. Omega's just very silent. And Gramps calls him Sam. I can't recall why that is, if he just felt comfortable calling him Sam, but that's the name that he kind of gives him. Amber, Ruth, and James Michael are out at it like a soda shop, getting like not something I've ever had, but egg creams. Have you ever had one of those?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay, I've never had one of those, so I don't know what
they're good. They're good.
Are they?
Yeah.
All right, so they're getting egg creams, and the Hulk, who has left Central Park, he was at the zoo, and then he as Bruce, he passed out as Bruce Banner in an alley, and some vigilantes are hassling him, and Banner, of course, changes to the Hulk, and his presence is endangering James Michael, which alerts Omega or Sam, because they do have some sort of mental, spiritual, psionic connection between the two, which doesn't get explained fully. You can later on we'll talk about it.
Maybe
right?
in the Defenders issue.
Yeah. You can sort of say, I understand why, but it doesn't literally get explained. But Amber is a photographer, much like Peter Parker, in that she's a contract photographer, and she'll sometimes sell things to the Daily Bugle. Well, when the Hulk is Omega comes in to help defend James Michael, he's battling the Hulk, and Amber's taking pictures. She's like, oh man, these are going to be great. I'm going to sell these to Triple J, kind of thing. But their battles ended when Electro, who happens upon the scene, he knocks both of them out with an electric blast, and he abducts Omega, and James Michael falls unconscious.
Yep.
I don't know why my screen just like went away. That was weird.
You're good.
Yeah, he falls unconscious, and he has like a near-death almost experience when like a lightning strike almost.
Right. Because remember, Electro hit
correct
Omega, and that affected him as well. Yeah.
So I think that's two, right?
Yeah, and Electro accosts Omega. And oh, by the way, he blasted the Hulk too between the eyes, and that kind of stuff.
Right, he blasted both of them. Yeah,
and then he took off with Omega. Let's look at the chat one more time, because I think there were some other people that came in here. Ranger Sly, how you doing, my friend? Great to see you here. Callie and Jordan Squad, welcome. Big sports fan. All right.
Okay, so Digger Jim is asking, what powers does Omega have? Well, he can fly. He's very strong, but his main power is bursts of energy that he can produce from the palms of his hands.
Yeah. Now, the flying thing is weird because it's weird because sometimes you think he can fly, but then like when he rescues that lady, he plonks into the river. Right. So it's like sometimes I think he's just leaping, and other times he's flying. I mean, they never make up their mind there, but and he has that psionic link with James Michael apparently. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call that a power, but But yeah.
Well, true. I mean, it's.
I mean, twins. You could say twins have that.
Yeah, true.
To a certain extent. So.
All right. So in this one here, and that's a little Gil Kane cover here, by the way.
It is.
So he's because he was knocked out or whatever in that ice cream shop. He's taken back to Dr. Barrow.
Yep.
And he starts asking him questions and intimating that maybe these are psychosomatic episodes.
Right.
And James Michael takes umbrage with that and says, "Do you think, I'm doing this?" And so he's, again, Barrow is really forceful here with him. He has the orderly throw him in a chair and says, "Take him to his room." And,
he doesn't like Barrow too much. I think Barrow is very well-meaning, but he doesn't come across that way to James Michael. And by extension, James Michael never fully develops that trust with Ruth, although he does very much with her roommate Amber.
Exactly. Yeah, he's always like a little bit suspicious of her, right?
Yep.
All right. So after that, the doctor says, "Hey, guess what? You're going to school. We're putting you in school because why not? You've never been to school. You need the socialization. You need the experience. Right. This is Hell's Kitchen, guys.
Right.
This is one of the roughest areas in the New York boroughs. Okay.
Matt Murdock, attorney at law, operates in that area.
Right. I mean, I've never been there myself, but I know people who've lived there, and yeah, it's rough. So he goes to enroll. He meets the principal, and he's obviously very respectful. He was like, "Oh, I'll find the classroom myself." He goes in the classroom where the chaos is, and there's people throwing paper planes, yelling, and upturning tables, and all this. The teacher is just beside himself. And when he comes in, he slaps him. The teacher slaps James Michael, and he's like, "What? Yeah, what? You were sneaking up on me. No, I was told to come here." He's like, didn't apologize. Yeah, go take your chair or whatever. Yeah. So.
Yeah, typical New York school.
Yeah, first day of school, yeah, that's the way to introduce yourself, right? So he's immediately befriended by Diane.
Yep.
Who's like just takes him by the arm and says, "Hey, you have my lunch period. Let's go talk." And he's like, "You're kind of a bit forward, aren't you?"
Right,
I mean,
right.
Yeah. Well, again, he has never had a relationship before or anything, so they go to the cafeteria where they meet the third kind of friend here in school, John Nedney, I do believe his name is. Nedley.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. He's sort of a nerd.
Sort of a nerdish, got glasses. He's a writer, Yeah, what more can you say? Probably looked like me at that point. Anyway. And he also meets Nick.
Right.
Which is
nicknamed Roger. He's the bully. Of the wait a minute. No.
I got bullied. I didn't bully anybody.
But Nick is definitely a bully,
Nick is definitely a bully. And,
any definition, yes.
And he starts like talking to him, and he's like, "Oh, and George James Michael's like, this food is like, and he's like, "Oh, you're insulting our food." Of course, this is any excuse. I challenge you. I'll meet you after school. And we'll have it out in the whole bit. And Diane's like, "Hey, just ignore him. He's all talk and all this, right?" Well, she didn't say exactly like that, but she's like, ignore him for now. So, okay, while this is going on, again, the stories here is interesting because it's a bifurcated story. You're getting parts of Omega and you're getting parts of James Michael, right?
And that happens often. Yeah.
Right. And they'll be just like these kind of stark segues sometimes, right?
Yep.
And somewhere in there, it segues back to Omega, and he's again tied up in some, I think, on the subway, an abandoned subway.
Kind of like Seinfeld. If you ever watched that television show, you would have different things going, and then ultimately they would tie in together at the end, similar to that.
Yeah. Good point. And the reason Electro kidnapped him is that he thinks that he can repair the metallic guy. He's got knowledge. And now the fact that he was carrying him, how he made that conclusion, I don't know.
Right.
Whatever, right? So, and of course, Omega's not talking. He's like, and he's being held by these cuffs that Electro put there.
Right. He has him prisoner in a subway tunnel.
Right. But when he gets close enough, he kicks Electro and the metallic man who's behind him onto one of the rails, and he briefly becomes to life.
Yes.
Yeah. The metallic man, that is, right.
Correct.
Electro was just annoyed by that.
Right.
So he's like, oh, maybe you're useful or whatever. So Electro at that point, I guess he charges him up with his electricity.
Yep.
And he because he wants an accomplice to rob the telephone. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up, guys.
A telephone for a crippled boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the Jerry Lewis telethon for muscular dystrophy and the whole bit.
Named Freddie, I think his name was.
Right, named Freddie. Right, exactly. So he takes a metallic man and he goes on TV.
That's pretty bad.
You know, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to take all the donations from all these cities, and so he's there, and he of course, and then James Michael, which now got out of school. As he went out, Nick gave him a punch, but Amber's like, yeah, shake it off, kid. They go back to the apartment. He sees the telephone on the TV, and he sees Electro. And of course, that gives Omega the impetus to break out, go to the telephone,
right,
and start fighting Electro and the metallic guy.
Right. And yeah, yep.
Right.
He defeats the alien. I just call him an alien.
Alien. Okay. Yeah. So
yeah, he defeats the alien, and then he and Omega and Electro blast each other.
Yep.
But then Freddie,
standoff,
not to be outdone, trips Electro with his crutch. Allowing Omega to defeat him. Yeah. Freddie has
giving him just that chance.
Laugh. Yeah.
Yes. That's all he needed. And Electro, of course, as usual, is defeated in the most ignominious way.
Yep. That was great. It's a fun issue.
Yeah. Fun issue. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I like Gerber, those little nuances, like they start after they try to like interview Omega, and he's like, oh, how do you feel about saving all, and he's like, nothing,
right,
and they're like, can you give me something? Nothing. So anyway, all right, you want to take El Gato?
Sure, that was a
all right. Let me take it out because these bags are old and glary.
Beautiful.
Let's see if anything's going on in the chat before we get started here. Hey, I'm Morty Biggie Chack Shop. How you welcome, buddy? Great to see you.
We got Damien, Sleepy Reader.
Of course, Sleepy Reader, my buddy Damien.
Ben Compton.
Yeah. All right.
We've got Kenneth.
Oh, is Kenneth in here? I didn't see him.
Yep, he is in here as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jackson Roy Kirk, for putting those links in. Yeah, put in those links for these fine folks in the chat.
Comic Journey has joined us.
Oh, Journey. CJ's here. Oh, yeah, there he is. Omega's my guy. Wish they bring him back. Yep. Well, they kind of did in the 2000s, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
All right, number 4. Beautiful Chaikin cover, by the way.
Very beautiful, yes.
So James Michael's attacked by Nick, a.k.a. Roger the Bully, and his gang, but Diane kind of intervenes and protects him, right? But you get the idea that that's not going to be an indefinite solution, right?
Definitely not.
In chemistry class, old crafty Nick switches these vials of chemicals when the chemistry teacher is doing an experiment, when the teacher wasn't looking. And it was just, I guess, some kind of prank or something that he was thinking, but it was a dangerous prank. Well, James Michael warns the teacher, but he doesn't listen to him. He makes it seem like he's upstaging him or James Michael's trying to cause trouble. And Nedley, at the last minute, takes the flask that he was going to use and throws it out the window, burning his hand because it's going to explode. It was caustic. The teacher takes both Nedley and James Michael to the principal's office, blaming them for the prank or the dangerous situation, whatever you want to call it. And the principal figures out pretty much that the teacher's at fault for not having listened properly, thus pissing him off just a little bit more. They're released, but when I think Nedley went into like the bathroom, and Nick and his buddies, his gang, are there waiting on him, And that probably won't turn out well. But we don't know
we'll
it
see
at
that
that
next
point.
issue. Yeah.
Yes. In the interim, or while that's happening, Omega, he rescues some woman who is falling or jumping from the 59th Street Bridge. He has no concept of suicide, what that is, or why somebody would do something like that. And what's notable, other than he saves this woman's life, is that he speaks his first word in any of the issues. He says, "Why?" As in, why would you do something?
Why would you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. He takes her to Gramps.
This is Teresa Mendez, by the way.
Yes, Teresa Mendez, and she says she's been cursed since refusing to pay her late mother's debts to a hometown local brujo named El Gato.
Yeah, witch doctor.
Right? Which means the Roger in Spanish.
It's a witch doctor.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
a witch doctor, and he gave her herbs and incantations, and it didn't work. She needed open heart surgery.
Correct,
but he still wanted to be
oftentimes, but he would always have his fail-safe. Well, it wasn't meant to be, kind of thing. Yeah, if things didn't work out, but I still require my payment. Mm-hmm. Gramps calls Omega Sam. I've already said that. Sam goes for a walk while Gramps talks to Teresa. When Omega returns, Gramps says that she was abducted by someone who was in a limousine. So Omega goes outside real quickly, gets to the limo, and El Gato gets out. He has mystic powers, and he uses them to attract a horde of cats. El Gato, well, there you go. To attack Omega. And Gramps comes to the rescue by opening up a fire hydrant that sprays water everywhere, because cats oftentimes don't like water, and kind of scatters them, right? El Gato says, "Hey, I got nothing to hide. You want to talk to her? She's going by her own volition here." So he does, and in a hypnotic state, Teresa says she's going with El Gato of her own free will, and he just lets them kind of drive away. There's not much he can do at that point.
Yep, true. But we know, obviously
we know that's not true, Roger. We know she's not going of her own free will.
We know she's not going of her own will, because she had said that even like a bunch of things happened to her, like her boyfriend got run over by a car, the apartment above hers caved into her apartment, so she got evicted.
Yep.
Her fish died.
All this bad luck has happened because I refused to pay.
Yeah.
El Gato's fee. Yes.
Who's apparently the real thing. He's apparently got some juju, right? Correct. Hey, Crystal. Right. Hey, Brian. Welcome.
Or at least that's what she thinks.
Yeah. At least that's what she thinks, right? And some, his powers are kind of ill-defined here, but we can sort of see.
Right. Well, you get that he has some sort of mystical power, but also that he was probably arranging some of these mishaps to reinforce the fact that, yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he arranged most of those, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Gil Kane cover here, I do believe. Yes.
It is.
So here, now the first panel, we see John Nedley walk into the cafeteria, and he is just a wreck. I mean,
yeah, he stumbles into the cafeteria.
He stumbles he has been beaten within an inch of his life. Plops on the floor. James Michael has like this vision of like these demons and things. Again, when he's not used to these kinds of situations, so apparently they affect him, right? And the nurse comes in and they take him away in a stretcher. Apparently, he's got multiple broken bones, some kind of interior injuries, internal injuries.
Yeah. And interior, what the hell?
And interior, interior, exterior, everywhere. Okay, and then again segues to Omega, right? Yep. And Omega, of course, knows that that what occurred with Teresa Mendez was not on the up and up, so he wants to see what's going on. And there's a sort of a scene where Teresa and El Gato.
But before we go in there because I think for that last scene,
Yeah.
James Michael starts hearing voices in his head from his classmates.
Yeah.
Right. And he hears like revenge. Someone should get revenge from Tank, one of
Oh,
his
that's right.
classmates.
That's right.
So that is an important precursor.
That's right. Although it's not totally fleshed out, but we see this guy named Tank leave the cafeteria.
Yep.
And so again, we'll get back to that. I think at the end of this issue or the next issue. I forget which one. But anyway, so El Gato gets to his mansion and he has a bunch of older ladies there in these robes and all that, and
Right.
Teresa's there, and he's announcing that he's gonna wed her, and they're all like, what? She's not worthy, and
right. She's too light. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
she's not worth it. Yeah.
she's a beautiful young woman, and these are older, not so attractive ladies, so you can sort of see why.
Right.
But anyway, so Sam goes back to the pawn shop with Gramps, and Gramps is going through a few things there, and he finds like this medallion that has like this lizard thing, and he starts saying, well, this is like some kind of voodoo charm, and I guess that sort of triggers Omega, his hey, maybe she's been hypnotized or been entranced or whatever.
Right.
So he goes over to El Gato's and breaks in there, and he's immediately attacked by these guardian cat things.
Yeah.
And
at least they're true to the character. So
yeah, true to the character, right? And is that when he tries to like blast them and he gets teleported back to the pawn shop?
No, I don't think so.
Am I mixing up my stories here?
Yeah.
I may be mixing up my stories here. No, that is what happens. Yeah, that is what happens. He gets that's the transition back to James Michael.
Oh yeah. Because the Omega symbol's turned upside down.
Yeah.
And so it blasts inward instead of outward when he tries.
Yeah, that's important at the end here. Because the same thing is going to occur, right?
Correct.
So segue back to James Michael. Yeah. Amber pulls him out after school after that whole rigmarole with Ned and Lee, and she's going to the Daily Bugle because she wants her
sister's got rent to pay.
She put in a voucher 2 weeks ago to Jay Jonah, and the guy that has welched so far, right?
And so she's taking her tough negotiator with her.
Yeah, so she's taking James Michael, and Jay Jonah's like, hey, you put in for double your usual rate. He goes, hey, that was a front page story you ran it on. James Michael's like, your logic is faulty. That has nothing to do, no bearing to with the quality of the photographs or the money involved. If it wasn't for that, you would not have been able to. And he was like, all right. And there's a little cameo by Peter Parker there, and he's like, hey, can I borrow this guy for the future? Like,
yeah, it was good.
Sorry. Again, those little Gerber's little takes, little vignettes and things.
Almost really Easter eggs. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So now that she's going to get paid, she takes, to reward him, takes him back to that ice cream shop.
Right.
They're finally going to have their, malt or egg cream, whatever. And while they're talking, and he has another one of those kind of vision things when Ruth passes by, and he's like, "What?" Amber's curious about, what is it that you're seeing? Is like it's these voices, and again, she knows something's up with this kid, right?
Right. Yeah, because she spends a lot more time with him than Ruth does too.
Yes, that's correct. All right, so again, back to Omega. He's outside somehow he got teleported back there.
Right, he's outside. He awakens outside the pawn
outside, shop. Right. He awakens outside.
Brings him in.
Right, and again, he talks to Abe, and that's when he sees that little amulet thing. And Amber Ruth has talked to Dr. Barrow so that James Michael and Diane can go see Nedley in the hospital.
Yep.
And he has messed up, tubes everywhere, bandaged, black and blue. And they said they had to operate on him, and it's touch and go, but they think he might pull through. So that again, it goes back and forth, back and forth. Now we go back to Elgato. The ceremony is starting.
Well,
it's
but
not
before
really
that,
a wedding
though,
ceremony.
Gramps does say something important to Omega. Because he's talking about magic, because clearly Teresa thinks that El Gato has some sort of magic. And Gramps says that magic relies on faith more than knowledge. And that's like an important piece. Something clicks with Omega, and then he rushes back to the house where El Gato is at.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I forgot about that. You're right. Absolutely right. That is important. So the ceremony is going on. You know, the older ladies are escorting Teresa over to El Gato. She's like in a veil and a kind of a pretty dress, and apparently it's not a wedding as such. She's going to be branded with this cat symbol.
Yes, with El Gato
apparently
symbol.
That makes her compliant or whatever.
On the forehead, yes.
Yeah, right on the forehead. I mean, rough, right?
Yeah.
But of course, right before that, Omega shoots in through the window and interrupts that part of the ceremony.
Yeah.
He's attacked sort of by these older ladies, but it's unclear whether it's them or is there some kind of apparitions or something because they disappear.
Yeah. Right.
Doppelgangers or something. Yeah. And again, it's like what you're saying is like he's not sure if this is hypnosis or if this is
are they illusions? Are they real?
Illusions, right. Yeah. So he fights off all these women. They disappear in the whole bit. And finally, he confronts El Gato. He gets his sword off the wall. And El Gato says, "Oh, you only have one form, but I can transform." He transformed to this black jaguar, this huge black jaguar. And just swats Omega, starts fighting him. But Omega manages to get him outside. And as he's thrown outside, he runs into Teresa. Right, sort of snaps her out of her trance. There.
Right.
While he's outside, Omega's flinging the El Gato in his jaguar form and blasts him until he's just not unconscious.
Senseless. Yeah.
And what happens next? Teresa's running out of his building with that poker and jabs that poker into his forehead, inverted,
upside down. Yes.
Right. So now all his power is actually working against him.
Yeah, it's sealed within him.
Was important. Yeah.
Yep.
And then we see at the end, they wheel in another guy into the hospital, and it's Nick, who's been beat up like Ned.
Right.
So we don't know what happened there, but we can connect the dots. Perhaps.
Yep. He was run over by a tank, quite possibly.
Quite possibly, although we never really find out what happens there. But anyway. All right, so that's 6. So the wrench. Here we go. The wrench.
John Romita. Not your favorite JR, but close enough.
No, this guy is one of my favorites.
The senior.
Yeah.
All right, so John Michael wakes from a nightmare where he often has these nightmares. Where he, as Omega, fails to prevent Nick from killing his friends. Nick, Tank, killer robots. They're all killing his friends, right? Yep. Ruth tries to comfort him, but ends up calling him a robot because she's angry, right? He doesn't open up to her. He won't confide in her, and so she gets angry with him. Calls him a robot because of the way he acts and how closed off from her he is. Storms off. He goes for a walk. He says, nothing better to clear my head than to take a walk around Hell's Kitchen at night. Let me go ahead and do that.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So he goes for a walk. Meanwhile, Gramps takes Omega to one of his favorite watering holes, I guess you kids will call it.
A bar.
To get a drink with some of his experienced friends, some of Grant's older friends, some of his crowd. Omega doesn't really like alcohol, doesn't like the way it makes him feel, but he gets a pop or two in him. And they take Graham's friend Mamie home.
Mamie.
And Yeah, she's a very special friend of Gramps.
Very special friend of Gramps. Yes.
Yeah. And Gramps mentioned that her friend Ethel was killed recently by a mugger. Now, that's partly in preparation for what's coming next, or to foreshadow what's coming next, but it's also a little bit of social commentary Gerber loves throwing into a lot of his series as well. They hear a scream after having taken Mamie home, and she goes up to her apartment. And so Omega flies through the window. And what he sees is that Mamie is struck down by this huge man holding a huge wrench. And his name is Wrench, oddly enough. So he's mentally ill. Clearly, he escapes. Omega's unable to get him. But in the meantime, James Michael spots Amber on a date. She's coming home, being walked home by her escort, a young dapper Roger in the 1970s. And he's almost, you can tell he's kind of jealous. James Michael is. He's watching her in hiding, and he seems a bit jealous. When she goes inside, realizes he's not home, she goes, well, I need to go looking for him. This isn't the place for a kid to be wandering around right now. She finds him in an arcade, being threatened by some of the local ruffians who are there playing video games, and gets him out of there, starts walking him home through an alley where they meet, guess who? Our friend Wrench.
The Wrench.
Yeah. So Omega swoops in, and he's knocked out by the Wrench. James Michael's frozen in fear. He doesn't know what to do. And Amber gets knocked out as well. James Michael.
He tries to club him, but
right, it doesn't work. James Michael shoots energy like he did in the hospital from the palms of his hand at Wrench, and that stops him. But he's confused about what happened and how it happened, how he was able to do that.
Yeah, he doesn't consciously control it.
Right.
It just happens.
At least not at this point, he doesn't. Correct.
Yeah. Also, the Wrench, remember, Ethel was his mother, and her death made him snap.
Right.
He was
Ethel was the mother of the Wrench, and she's the one that was killed by the mugger.
And he was in Mamie's apartment because that he knew that they were close friends, and he just wanted anybody involved to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was very mentally ill. Yes.
Oh yeah.
The Wrench. All right, so now let's talk about. I think at this point here we get another writer, Scott Edelman, and I think the next one is by Roger Stern, as I recall. Another nice little cover here. So the scene just it's back to where that street scene. James Michael is just what happened. He's like he's trying to figure out what it is that's occurring. Omega recovers, grabs James Michael, takes him up to a rooftop, and says a single word: secret.
Yep.
Secret.
And the cops are coming before he can elaborate. So
correct. And then the cops are coming and see him up there. They arrest the Wrench, and Amber sees him and he says, "Hey, where are you, James Michael?" And of course, at that point,
we might want to mention this is the first issue that isn't written by Gerber and Screens.
Yeah, I did. I said Scott Edelman was the writer. Gotcha. Yeah, that's right. This one is by Edelman. I think the next one by Stern. Correct. But James Michael knows that means that there's something between them.
Right.
Obviously, he's had visions of him in the past, so he knew already. But sort of confirmation of that.
Yep.
Omega goes back to Gramps. Gramps is, obviously grieving over the death of Mamie.
He's distraught.
He's angry. He's punching the wall. He's like, how, why does it have to be her? Why couldn't it be me? Obviously he was planning on perhaps asking her for her hand in marriage because he was planning a honeymoon, which we'll find out later on. And then we segue to this guy, Blockbuster, and he's in this apartment just thrashing and pontificating to himself, essentially. Oh, why did they Why did they not let me have my son? They have to
Right.
give it to a foster family, and they're paying them. And I had a prison sentence, and but I want to do good by my son. I don't want him to end up how I did. So
Right.
logically,
He'd
what does
just
he
been
do?
released from prison.
He's been released from prison.
Just
Recently. So what does he do? He goes and robs a bank.
That's what anyone would do. Sure.
Right? I mean, how else to impress your son? No, but
Yeah.
his logic is that he's going to get that money, so his son won't be poor and won't
Right.
end up in a
similar
Bowery
situation.
area like he did. Right.
Yep.
But while that's happening, of course, coincidentally, Amber and James Michael are there. And of course, Amber being and Diane too. Amber being the photographer that she is trying to get to the bank and photograph the action that's going on.
Right, because they were headed to the hospital to visit John Nedry.
They were headed to the hospital to visit John, right? And again, Omega's consoling Gramps when, of course, he gets a mental image from, I'm assuming, James Michael, that something's going on. Heads over there to where that's going. It's nearby. I mean, it's not that far. And he interrupts the robbery. He starts fighting the Blockbuster.
Yep.
Blockbuster throws a car at him. He atomizes it with his energy blast. But the Blockbuster throws him into this lamppost, temporarily immobilizing him, and Blockbuster gets away with the money. And Omega's like, you know what? This is really causing a lot of damage and a lot of danger to these people, so I'll let him just get away, But right. The people there are starting to say, hey, you can't do that. That's my bank, and you just can't let this guy get away with that. So after consideration for a little bit, he's like, okay. Follows him, I guess, a few blocks down. Again, he leaps or flies. I'm not sure what he does there. But anyway, and he finds him again. And he's like, Blockbuster's like, what? I let you live and all this, right? Then doesn't matter. Omega starts clubbing at him. They fight, throws him down. There's a construction site, throws him down this, I guess it's some kind of access way. But Omega holds onto a pole, goes back up. Blockbuster thought he was gotten rid of him. They fight at the top of this building that's being constructed. And during that, Blockbuster throws a I-beam, and it crumples everything because it's part of the main structure retaining there. And you would think they both die, but he's much tougher than a normal human, so they both survive. And Blockbuster starts telling him, "Hey, I'm only doing this for my son. I'm robbing banks so that my son won't have to go through this." Somehow that tugs a little bit. I think because of James Michael, he kind of wants to get him out of the situation as well, so he can relate to that. So he lets him go. And again, the people are like, how could you do that? And there it ends.
Yeah, and a couple things. So James Michael sees that, and he's like, this guy is not your typical Law and Order type superhero enforcer. And also when I think it's kind of important that before Omega left because of the commotion at the bank, he did say his first words to Gramps. He said, "I am sorry."
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
And was like, you don't talk.
Right.
But the exposition says it's not that he doesn't talk. It's just that he doesn't really need to. He doesn't.
Yeah, he hasn't much to say most times. Yeah.
He only said he does talk a lot later on when they go to Vegas and stuff.
Right. He talks more. Yeah.
Yeah. At that point. Yeah. All right. Now things are getting interesting. Nitro.
Yeah. This one was a treat because Lee Elias is doing the interior.
Lee Elias did the interior, correct. And I think Roger, is it the Roger Stern issue?
It is Roger Stern. Yes.
Okay.
He wrote
All
it.
right,
Yeah.
So go ahead, my friend.
Yeah. So Ruth takes Amber and James Michael to the bus station. This is kind of fun. This was fun for me because I'm a fan of Man-Thing, right? To greet her boyfriend. Who might that be? Of course, Richard Rory, the luckless loser from the swamps of Man-Thing.
Wow. And introduced by a Roger Stern issue, too. I guess Gerber
exactly.
I'm sure Gerber had the outline somewhere because that's the Gerber guide through and through.
Yeah, they were unaware, though, at the time that they were being stalked by someone, and that someone is the Fool Killer.
Ooh.
Um,
Didn't he die in Man
he
Thing?
did.
Bill?
He did die. Yes.
Okay. I
So
thought I remembered that.
I'll cover that in a minute. So Rory gets a card telling him that he has 24 hours to live. And he's, really worried about it. He's like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But it's his old cellmate when Richard Rory was in prison, his old cellmate, Paul?
Greg.
Well, Greg. That's right. Greg, yes. He's the new Fool Killer because Richard Rory was talking about it. And so he kind of said, hey, I'm going to adopt that mantle, but without any religious zealotry, that the previous Fool Killer had.
Yeah, he's more of a poet than a zealot.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Nitro, as mentioned in the cover, he's appeared because he's looking for Captain Marvel, and he thinks that Omega might be Captain Marvel.
The costumes do have similarities.
Some similarities, yeah. So, but Omega chases Nitro because they were battling to the Stark warehouse. And Nitro's hoping to draw in. He goes to the Stark warehouse specifically to draw in Iron Man, who's a buddy or a pal of Captain Marvel. So it's like his idea to try to get to Captain Marvel, right?
Trying to get his attention,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Omega clamps this
great logic
metal titanium tube or something over Nitro as he explodes. And it sends his atoms way up into the sky. But a side effect is it causes the ceiling of the warehouse to collapse on Omega. And so that's kind of where this issue ends. But during this issue, Omega does start speaking in complete sentences. So this is kind of where he says more than just 2 or 3 words at a time.
Correct. All right, great. All right. Let's look in the chat real quick before we get too far. Hey, Zars is in here. How you doing, my buddy? From all the way from Australia. And we got I saw Area Man in here. How you doing, Morris?
Yeah.
Solid 4-string bottom end. That's my buddy Shannon. I love the Omega series. Really offbeat and different. That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
You finally got the Defenders issue. Good, because we're going to be discussing that in a bit. All right. So we're getting to the end of this series. It's only 10 issues.
Right.
And the 10th issue, as we're going to be talking about, is quite odd. But let's get to number 9 for now.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Oh, okay. All right. So I was like, what are you talking about? So in this issue, again, he recovers. He's stuck under that building, but he recovers. Yep. Obviously, he's much tougher.
Well, when he gets buried, something happens to James Michael.
James Michael, yeah. He again collapses. He's in the apartment. He has like a fever, and he's just just a fugue state or something weird, right? So they're calling Dr. Barrow. Hey, it's happening. Rory's like, hey, what's up with this guy? I mean.
And Amber and Ruth are getting upset with Rory. They're like, quit being so concerned about you when something's going on with James Michael.
Yeah. He's being very flippant about his condition and the whole bit, right? But after Omega gets out of there and does fly off, this time for sure, James Michael just recovers.
Right.
Just gets up and
seemingly
says, hey,
miraculously,
what happened? Yeah. Like nothing happened. Again, further deepening that, whatever happens to one affects the other.
Yep.
So they have that physical and maybe psionic relationship. Well, we'll talk about that later. During when Omega goes back to the pawn shop, he sees this fight between a fruit vendor and somebody who he thinks is robbing from him, and the erstwhile robber takes out a knife and it's about to stab him when they're both shot by the Fool Killer, and they just disappear. I mean, they're disintegrated.
Right.
And Omega
he has like a disintegrating gun. Correct.
Yes, correct. He's taken that. I think he called it the purification back in the Man Thing.
Right.
And so, Gramps sees that, and he's like, and Omega saying, do you approve of this? He's like, yeah, they deserve it and all this. And he's like, I'm not sure about that. But anyway, they start talking about it. And he's like, well, you're injured. Let me go. Again, he was a corpsman in the World War One.
Right.
So let's go back to the pawn shop and we'll take care of you. All this is going on. Rory is like pacing because he got that card. He's like, I'm gonna die. I got 24 hours.
No, he must have been a corpsman in World War II or Korea.
I think he said World War One.
Did he?
Yeah, in that other issue. Because remember, he's like in his 80s at this point.
That's true.
The 70s. So
yeah, and this is in
probably
the 70s.
20.
Yeah. All right.
So Rory is leaving the apartment because he's like, he doesn't want. He knows because of the man thing.
Right.
He knows that the Fool Killer, he's true to his word, you know.
Yep.
And he thinks somehow he survived. But it's not the Fool Killer. It's like the superintendent. Amber was taking a shower. There's no hot water, so she fights with the superintendent. And then right after that, the Fool Killer just walks into the apartment.
Waltzes in.
Yeah, Rory's like, oh, I'm dead. Oh, guess what? No, I'm your buddy. You know, remember me from prison? I'm not going to kill you. But, you know, I am the Fool Killer.
Yeah.
Yet, at least, yeah. And he blasts his way. He explains himself. He's like, well, you know, I want to take over. Like you said, you know, I want to take over for what the Fool Killer did, but not with that insanity or that zealousness. Just
right, because at first Rory thought it might be a lark or some type of gag or something. But like, no, I'm genuine about this.
No, I'm going to do it. He blasts the window and gets out instead of walking out the door. I don't know why. just to, you know.
He's a show off.
Right. So Omega then asks Gramps for money. And
how much money do you have saved up?
Yeah, how much do you have? $300. What's it for? He goes, well, you know, if I have to tell you, then forget it. He goes, oh, no, go ahead, take it.
Yeah.
So he goes. Now, I'm not too clear about this, Bill, right? He goes to this men's shop and he sees a suit in the window. So was he going to buy that suit?
Yes, he was going to buy that suit with the money, yes.
But of course, right next door is a jewelry shop.
As a prelude to making more money.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the Las Vegas thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, of course, right next to, coincidentally, Bill,
it's a jewelry store.
It's a jewelry store. And guess what? Blockbuster robbed it. And
of course he did.
Yeah. And he's coming out, and Omega's like, oh, okay, I guess I got to take this guy on again.
This guy again.
You know, Blockbuster throws him in front of the bus. He gets run over by the bus, but he gets better.
Yep.
And again, the audience, I mean, the people around say, hey, you got to get this guy.
Right,
you know?
Right.
Yeah. So
because he's not necessarily automatically inclined to do so.
No, he's not.
He doesn't have that intrinsic feeling of being part of the delivery of justice for that society.
Correct. So some guy says, oh, he went to Rockefeller Center. So they go to Rockefeller Center. They again tussle. I mean, Blockbuster throws Omega into that golden statue in front of the Rockefeller Center rink there, and Blockbuster gets away. But of course, he ends up right by Gramps' pawn shop, and he's like, "Okay, nobody saw me here. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get away. I'm gonna start a new identity." Of course, Gramps sees him there, and he feels the need to get rid of the witness. So he's about to kill Gramps. Omega comes in, saves him, and after a brief tussle, once again, the Fool Killer with his purifier eradicates the Blockbuster.
Yep. And just to be clear, the reason Omega chased him is because the jewelry store owner said, "Hey, I'll give a reward."
Oh, that's right. $1,000.
And he wants money. We don't know why he wants money, but he wants money.
He wants money. That's right. That's right. He did say $1,000 for anybody. Yep. So he's like, oh, definitely got to get him.
Yep.
All right. We're wrapping it up, at least the Omega part, with number 10.
Then he tells Omega before he leaves, he tells Omega that don't be too sure of yourself because I may pass sentence on you too at some point.
That's right. The Fool Killer does say that.
Yeah.
He's like, the jury's still out on you, but this guy for sure was a fool. All right. You got number 10, Bill. Good luck.
So number 10, shortly after being released from the hospital, John Nedley dies. So unfortunately, James Michael, Diane, Ruth, Amber, they all attend the funeral. Omega attends in the suit that he bought with the reward money. from returning the jewelry that was stolen by Blockbuster. Because he didn't, obviously Blockbuster's gone, but he still got the money for returning the jewels.
Yeah.
Now Omega determines he definitely needs money because he needs to get James Michael out of Hell's Kitchen. It's a horrible environment. He's lost a lot of his faith in humanity. Well, I guess I can't say that. He's inclined not to put much faith in humanity. It's not like he's lived amongst humans for a long time and has gradually lost that faith. It's that he's inclined to think that they're a very brutal, selfish, vengeful race of individuals, and he wants to extricate him from that environment in one way, shape, or form. So independently, though, James Michael's kind of come to the same conclusion. This is a dangerous place to be. And obviously the death of his friend really hit home with him. Probably made him maybe the most emotional that he's been up until that point.
He shed a single tear, I was told.
Yep, absolutely. So he comes to the same conclusion. He says he's going to leave Hell's Kitchen, and Diane finds out about it. She says, "Hey, let me join you. I want to get the hell out of here.
I want to get out of here too." Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, "All right." So they go, and I think they bought a bus ticket.
Yep.
And they take a bus back to the only other place he knows, which is his home in the mountains, where seemingly no one's been since the death of his parents. Right.
Yep. Mountain Pennsylvania.
Right. So he's showing Diane around the house, and they just happen upon a hidden closet, which contains, wouldn't you know, his parents. Like, what? So obviously his parents were like robots or androids or something of that nature. And this was like a backup pair because they were still emotionless, hadn't been activated or whatever you want to call them. But at any rate, that was quite a surprise for both of them. Gramps, in the meantime, he and Omega go out to Vegas. Because Omega wants to make that money, right? To help James Michael. And so Omega uses his knowledge of gambling devices and his ability to kind of calculate probability in his head, to game the Vegas system. And they do so. They win $55K in one night. Yeah, one night.
They went to different casinos, different games. Right. They lost every once in a while.
The pit bosses would catch on. They just go on.
They go to another one. Yep.
So they quit for the evening, and they're going to head up to the hotel. But Ruby Thursday has been watching them in a disguise, and she follows them to their hotel room, and she attacks them, takes their money. She leaves her demonic servant, Dybbuk.
I think that's a Hebrew demon, if I recall correctly.
Okay. And he attacked Omega earlier in the desert when Omega was seeking some solitude. So there's a connection there between those two. Yep. Omega recovers. He chases Ruby down. Now, this is the key part, right? So he chases her down, and he's tearing into her, and the police think that this crazy dude is attacking an innocent woman because she's in disguise, right? And so they go ahead and shoot him, and they actually kill him. Steve Gerber, I think, had like a note at the end of this where he promises to finish this series, because obviously it was canceled, but it was canceled after that was produced to go to print for that issue. So he says, "Hey, you know what? I write the Defenders. I will finish this in the Defenders." Little did Steve Gerber know that he would be relieved of his duties at Marvel prior to being able to fulfill that promise.
Exactly.
It does happen in the Defenders, but not by him and not by someone who had the same sort of passion for the characters that he did. And so that's the real detriment to it.
And it happened several years later.
Yep.
Without any input by Steve Gerber, because he was upset with Marvel for being fired.
Yep.
But Stephen Grant wanted to finish the story. He was interested. He was a fan of Omega. And he came up with a conclusion that he thought maybe Gerber was up to. Now,
right.
it's number 10 is a very truncated plot. Obviously, there was a lot more that Gerber wanted to expose there than what occurred, right? He was never supposed to be killed at the end. I guarantee you that was out of nowhere. But we did have a conclusion in Defenders 70. Well, in 75, we'll just mention that Gramps identifies Omega's body. And, and at that point, he's in the morgue. Okay.
Right.
In 76, somehow, Amber, Rory get a hold of the Defenders.
Yep.
And the Defenders get a hold of the Wasp and get a quint. This is about a week later. This is 2 years real time, but a week later.
Yeah.
Okay? And they get a hold of the Wasp and they convince her to go search for this kid.
Right. And importantly, bring a Quinjet with you because we
And
don't have
bring
any
a
mode
Quinjet
of
with you.
transportation.
Right. So Valkyrie, Hellcat, Wasp, Richard, Rory, and Amber. Oh, and Diane, I think, is in there as well.
She is, correct.
Yeah.
That's very
Why
important.
not? Yeah. Why not? I mean, she's part of this. So I kid you not, right? This kid is that important.
Yeah.
Right. So they think that again, the only place.
Well, just to be clear, the Defenders have broken up at this point. Nighthawk was served a subpoena saying, "Hey, rascal, you can't be Nighthawk anymore.
Can't be Nighthawk anymore."
Yeah, and his house burns down the first day that Valkyrie is in charge of the Defenders, and he's like, you know what, the Defenders are done. And so that's kind of when Richard, Rory, and Amber said, "Hey, we know this isn't really a superhero thing, but can you help us look for a friend, be detectives for us?"
That seems reasonable to me.
Yeah.
So while they're on their way to their house in Pennsylvania, they see these flying saucers, coincidentally at that moment, flying down right by the house.
Yeah. What are the odds?
What are the odds of that happening, right? And of course, they're like, "Oh, we have to investigate this." The Wasp is like, "We got to investigate this." They're like, "Hey, can we go forget about that?" And she's like, "No."
All right.
So while that's going on, Ruby Tuesday and Dybbuk are stealing Omega from the morgue because
Ruby Tuesday is a restaurant.
What did I say?
Ruby Tuesday. It's Ruby Thursday.
Ruby. Oh, okay. Ruby. Yeah. Let's say Ruby.
Yeah, Ruby.
One of the headmen is stealing Omega because she thinks that. Well, now we're getting a little more knowledge. Apparently, he's some kind of organic, but cybernetic as well.
Right.
He has.
Right. Yeah, and she's in the morgue in Las Vegas.
Right. She's in the morgue where he died in Vegas. Right.
Yep.
So her dome is some kind of fusion of organic and cybernetics as well.
Right? Jackson's been misbehaving the whole stream, by the way.
Pay attention, Metarog. Yeah. Hey,
and he's told me twice. He's told me twice to pay attention.
Oh, okay. Hey, Buter, great to see you here, my buddy. I hope everything's going well with the bus. We're almost finished here, guys. So bear with us.
Bear with us. Yeah.
So again, this is not Gerber. This is Stephen Grant.
Yep.
It's sort of like DC Challenge, like you cliffhanger, and then you're trying to finish it off. Right?
And unfortunately, no Jim Mooney, but Herb Trimp does a really good job.
Herb Trimp does a good job here. Yeah, agreed. So again, same thing as in Omega. Now we're cutting off there. We're going back to James Michael, Diane in his house where they find his erstwhile parents, which are actually androids, right?
Right.
And he starts having like these voices.
Yep.
He starts having like this pain in his head. Why? Because those metallic beings are now making their way to his house. And he's now has some kind of sensory input there about their pending arrival.
Right. And their purpose.
And he sort of has a flashback to his mother disintegrating and says, "Don't listen to the voices. They're dangerous." Right?
Yeah.
So though the metallic beings have a little dialogue, now they say that Omega was actually called X-32.
Right.
A fusion of bioengineering of some sort and cybernetics. Okay. And that he must be destroyed at all costs. That's all we know.
Right.
Now, Ruby and Dybbuk are going to do some kind of autopsy on Omega to figure out how he functions.
Exactly.
Right?
How did he tick, and what can they glean from that?
Reckon they glean to that. Of course, while that's going on in Vegas, in Pennsylvania, those metal guys have now teleported down to in front of James Michael's house while the Avengers Quinjet is there and the Defenders got there as well.
Yep.
James Michael blasts a few of them before the Defenders get there, and Diane's like, "Hey, the Defenders are here. We're gonna be saved."
Right.
But Valkyrie and Hellcat and Wasp are not exactly the most powerful,
Right.
So they're just barely keeping these guys at bay.
Right, but they rush in and start fighting. That's key. That's key to know. They rush in and start fighting, but they realize they need some help.
So I think Valkyrie says, Hellcat, hey, you're not doing much here. Go back to the Quinjet. Put out at all
points bulletin. Yeah.
Any Defenders, any Avengers, anybody who with a stick can come help.
Yeah.
And then we get some interlude with the Hulk and Nighthawk. I'm not going to talk about that because it's not germane to this particular plot.
That's about the nameable, right? Yeah.
So the metal men, metallic, the aliens, we've tried to call them.
Right.
They sort of get the upper hand against the ladies, but just as they're about to enter the house, another spaceship comes down, and who is it? Moondragon.
It is Moondragon,
mistress of the mind.
Yeah,
and she has space experience, so she confronts them and say, "Hey, what's up? What do you can't allow you to get into this house? Why do you want to get into this house? Oh, it's an important mission." And right at that point, you see this big starburst come out of the house.
Blinding light.
And what that is that because Ruby was about to get into Omega, that caused a switch, a teleportation. So now James Michael is in Vegas in place of Omega the Unknown, and the body of Omega, the dead body of Omega, is now in front of the combined Defenders, Avengers in Pennsylvania. And that's where this
change.
So you have the very last issue, my friend. Well, we'll take it together, but
77, no problem.
77.
So the Defenders end up tracking James Michael to Vegas. Obviously, that was their original purpose, was to find him. He's escaped, and he escaped Ruby because Ruby had him, right? Obviously, when she had Omega and they switched, she had him. But he escaped her, and his power is growing. As time goes on, it's growing and growing. The Hulk, they do an interlude with the Hulk and the unnameable again. There's like this little being that the Hulk was fighting that he can't hurt, but he like implants the name of the unnameable, which is a very bad thing in the Hulk's mind, but I think the Hulk forgets it. But Moondragon and the Defenders, they fight off the aliens and Ruby, so they're doing well. They're succeeding against them. But then during the fight, Moondragon learns that the aliens created Omega and John Michael as experiments to continue to advance their race, the evolution of their race, right?
Yeah, because they were an evolutionary dead end.
Correct. And so, and what they did is they wanted to guarantee that their species continued. And they weren't advancing anymore. So each creation was disguised as a native of whatever planet they put that alien upon, right? So, and in Omega's case, or at least whatever the dominant species is of that planet.
Right.
In Omega's case, he was given the entire power of the planet that he lived in. And when he died, he transferred that power because of their link, because John Michael is actually like a later version, like the ultimate version.
A fully human.
Exactly.
He's like the end product. Yeah.
Correct. Of that transformation. He transferred all his power to John Michael. The Defenders seem, during this realization that Moondragon is having with the aliens when she can read their mind, right? It seems like the Defenders kill Ruby by smashing her head open. of course, we know how people get killed in comics, but
Yeah. They get better.
Moondragon, yeah, exactly. Seemingly never forever. Moondragon, she reveals John Michael's origin, and she says he's got way too much power. He can't handle this. This isn't good. And John Michael's getting pissed off at everybody. He wants to destroy everything, but he doesn't want to harm Diane,
Yep.
who's become so close to him, and some of the others too. But really, Diane's the key.
Diane, yeah.
And so he turns much like El Gato did, much like El Gato forced Omega to do. He turns his power inward on himself and destroys himself. The aliens were trying to eliminate John Michael and Omega because they came to the realization that this didn't work. They have too much power. They will destroy their host planets and perhaps other planets in the entire universe. So that's why they were going after them. And Moondragon's so pissed off at the Defenders for rushing into battle without fully understanding what happened, because they killed all of the alien invaders. And Omega was dead, and now with John Michael dead, James Michael being dead, the whole species was gone now.
Yeah.
And so she chastises him for this, saying, you led to the extinction of a species, and so next time you need help, don't call me.
Don't call me.
Yeah. And she takes off, and I think she removed Hellcat's psionic powers during that battle to use them for herself. I think Hellcat gets them back later, but she doesn't this issue. Yeah,
because she needed all her powers to mind meld.
Yep.
That alien, so she to James Michael to find out what was going on.
Correct, Jackson. Then, James Michael is actually the Omega of that race. Yeah,
that's right. It is the Omega. He is the Omega. That's why he called the Omega, because he's the ultimate product, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then Moondragon takes their bodies and
she buried them, give them a proper burial, right?
But they don't belong on Earth, she said. She's mad at herself too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
because
she got caught up with them.
She got caught up in it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey Tat, how you doing? Hey Art. All right, so let's wrap it up, Bill. I am so torn here because I got a feeling that this would have been one of the very best comic series if Gerber were allowed to take it to what he thought, the direction he thought it would go. After issue 9, that 10, that was a mess. You can tell that was just pieced together at the last minute.
You can tell he was forcing it together.
And Stephen Grant's conclusion, there were some good points. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he had a very unexpected kind of conclusion. To me, I would never have thought of that.
Right.
But it seemed mighty rushed and definitely not what Gerber had in mind. The relationship between Omega and James Michael, once that was gone, once Omega was dead, I think that Gerber was probably going to, take James Michael and ascend him, not destroy him. But that's my, I don't have any proof of that or anything like that.
Right.
But the first, what I like about this series is that it's a slow burn. They give you little hints here and there, and it intrigues you. What is that relationship? What are those visions? What are those voices? Why is Omega fighting off these guys? Where did he come from? He's the last survivor of his race? I mean, that's told. We're said right. That we're told right. That, and but his planet was destroyed. How, why, under what circumstance? There's so many questions that were out there that Grant tried to sort of answer, but it seemed to me like he just really wanted to. Marvel said, "You got a couple issues, right. Wrap it up the best you can, and c'est la vie." And it left a bad taste in my mouth, thinking to myself, right, of what a great opus this could have been if Gerber was given the chance to take it to its more logical conclusion.
Yeah, so I agree for the most part. I think it was still a good series. I think even if Gerber took it to its logical conclusion, I don't know that I'd put it up there with like some of his other work, like Howard the Duck or Man Thing. But I do think that it was good, and I do think that Stephen Grant tried.
He did.
I think that he made an honest attempt, and I think that both issues are pretty good. They're just, they're not what was the original intention of Gerber to begin with, and it does seem like one of two things happened. Either they said, we don't like that guy much anymore, but we'll give you the opportunity to wrap this up in a couple issues.
Right.
Or he's like, I'm writing for the Defenders. I need to kind of wrap this up because I have my own story arcs to get on with. Right. These are my employers. I have my own thing I need to do. And so I'll do my best to a certain extent. But it's always been a cult favorite. He's never been like a real. I mean, I first read this. There was a trade paperback with all these issues that were collected. So I probably read it 15, 20 years ago. I think I traded that off to somebody else, but I reread it with the Marvel Unlimited app for this, in preparation for this stream, which is, like I said, that thing pays for itself over and over again. It's a great app. Love it. But it's tough to say. So I like it. I think that there are some. I'm a big fan of the other stories outside of the main story kind of thing. Right. I like the drama. I like the everyday issue. That's why I think I gravitate toward a lot of Bronze Marvel. When you have your Ghost Rider, Spider-Woman, She-Hulk, all those, not necessarily She-Hulk so much, but Spider-Woman, James Michael, Rory, all the, I think it's such a funny trope with the luckless 1970s hippie, always looking for, I don't have $1 to my name kind of thing. Shit, they almost did it with Werewolf by Night, and he was rich, but they had him around bumming for money and trying to stay with this person or that person. I'm just drawn to that kind of stuff. I think it's fun, and Gerber was a big part of that.
Yeah, I think Gerber is really, first of all, he's very verbose and he has an incredible lexicon. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that, because growing up, when I was reading these issues, if I wasn't sure about the context or the word itself and how it played into the sentence, I would look it up, and that helped.
Jackson's misbehaving again. Yeah.
What did he say now? Okay, hold on. Let me put this up. Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm far more interested in what's going on outside of CMM's room. Oh boy! Wow. Yeah.
Friends like these.
I tell you, with friends like these, we don't need enemies, right? I know. We all know Jackson is one of the best out there.
He is, absolutely.
What was I getting at? The dialogue here is really profound, and like you said, there's social commentary, not as much as in Man Thing, but it's definitely there. I like that he had like this split 2-character arc that had some tenuous connections, but still there was a lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue there. I like those kind of stories that sort of, they pull at your imagination, and they want you to look beyond the surface of what's being done.
Clearly, he had a long game, right? He would tease it out in a couple issues. He knew, 4 issues from now I'm going to reveal this. Then another couple of them reveal this. He just didn't have the opportunity to bring that to fruition.
Yeah. And that happens a lot, because even in Man Thing,
sure,
you could tell at least he had much more time there, but you could tell he had some plans there that were not allowed to flourish as much as he wanted to, that slow burn. I really like that aspect of this. And perhaps I like this a little. Maybe I gave you the wrong impression, Bill. I really like this, the Grant issues, and I liked the series as well. Mm-hmm. I just think that it could have been. It's good. It could have been great.
Right. I think that it was good, and it could have been very good. That's maybe the only slight difference between us. I don't think it was original enough to have been great. I think that Man-Thing kind of covered a lot of this conceptually, and he just took it in a different direction because he had more story he wanted to tell, I think. But I agree, it was good, and it could have been great. Yeah, I'm not poo-pooing Stephen Grant's work on Defenders either. I think he did well with what he had, but it's clear to me that he didn't exchange notes. He didn't maybe have the relationship with Steve Gerber to exchange notes on what he intended. So he just took from his reading of it, here's what I think could have been a realistic conclusion to this.
Yeah, agreed. In fact, I know that for a fact because I remember Gerber talking about this. I'm not sure if it was an article or a panel he was on or something, but he definitely mentioned that he had no input into those Defenders issues. So, maybe Grant had some kind of notes or something from Gerber, perhaps. I don't know. But I guarantee you that was not the conclusion that Gerber. I mean, I can't guarantee you for 100%.
Right. But I think you can. Yeah, I think we can postulate pretty. You
definitely can postulate based upon what we know in Man-Thing, Howard the Duck, and some of his Defenders issues. This doesn't have that Gerber, charm and vibe to it.
Right.
There's one thing I do want to mention before we go: the death scene in issue number 10 for Nedney. That was pretty unusual for comics at that time, especially for a kid. Now, they didn't show the actual death, but when you see him in that hospital bed,
right,
in that very, compromising and very, very bad condition, and then the next time you don't see him is at that funeral,
right?
That was kind of a shock if you're a young reader. I mean, I was 11. Well, I didn't read this when I was 11 or 12. I probably read it when I was more like 15. But still, the fact that somebody that young was killed, not by like a superhero collateral damage, but by a bully at school, perhaps. I mean, we don't know that for a fact, but it really is a shocking kind of tidbit to put into a comic in 1979, I think 78, no, 77.
77 and then 79 were the Defenders issue.
With the Defenders, yeah. So again, it was a little edgier than most comics at the time.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Gerber often pushed those envelopes.
Exactly. Hey, Spider Comic 7, how you doing, my friend? Best tag team since the Legion of Doom. I like that one. Is that Nick?
It is Nick.
All right. I like this. Hold on. Where is that? Here we go. Best tag team since the Legion of Doom.
Good to see you, Nick.
Is that what you're saying, Nick? We're the villains?
Make a new video, you lazy bum.
Yeah, where you been, man? Come on. I haven't seen you in forever. So, all right. Well, unless you have something else, Bill, I think we can go to the wheel here and see
Let's do it.
What we'll torture with these people with next.
Let's do it. Let's see. Can I? Yeah. I will share the screen.
Let me make you big here if I can do that. How do you make yourself big here? Hold on. Where are you, Bill? Where are you? Oh, there you are. Not me. Him. Oh, well, that'll have to do.
Not letting me do it. Wonder why that would be. Screen sharing.
Well, if you want to, you can just run it and we'll believe you, Bill. We'll take your word for it.
Let me try it one last time. There we go. Can you see it?
No. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I can see it. No problem.
All right, here we go. How many times? Just spin it once?
Yeah, let's do it once. Let's not torture the people anymore.
Let's do it.
Then we have to.
We're going to find out the next retrospective victim. And there it is. Captain Marvel.
Yay.
Fantastic.
All right.
Right.
So do you want to start from the beginning, or do you want to start from the Starlin series?
Yeah, why don't we I'll leave that up to you. We can start with Captain Marvel #1, or we can start from his first appearance. I'd prefer to probably start from #1 of the Silver Age series and go through maybe around 20.
I think at
'Cause what were the-
17 is when he becomes the cosmic awareness guy. So maybe
Okay, we can
we can
do
stop it at
1
that
through
point,
19.
maybe.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And that way it leaves some meat on the bone for the viewers to go seek out those other issues and kind of pick up from where we left off.
Right. Yeah, the earlier ones we're talking about mostly his problems with defecting from the Kree and the relationship with Yonrag and all that stuff.
Yep.
And his, of course, his love of what's her name? I forgot the lady's name now. It's been a while since I've read that. So.
Yeah, we'll find out.
We'll find out. All right. Let's thank this great chat for sticking with us, and
Absolutely.
We'll probably do this in another 2 or 3 months. I'm going to be away on a cruise for most of May.
No, I understand, world traveler. That big shots like you are globetrotters. So whenever you get some, whenever you're by the beach for a couple hours and you get some downtime, and you can link up with that Starlink satellite, we'll do this. We'll do this Captain Marvel retrospective.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's our 30th anniversary, so we're taking a big, long
nothing
cruise.
wrong with that.
You know, she put up with me for 30 years. She definitely deserves.
Absolutely. She
cruise,
deserves a Pulitzer of some sort.
Of course, right. So
Nobel Peace Prize.
So maybe sometime in early August might be a good time to consider that.
Sounds good to me.
Because the summer gets a little hectic around here. All right, everybody. Thanks, chat. Thank you, Bill. Again, you were top notch as always. Love doing this with you because you're really getting to those nitty gritty things, which, I love those kind of nuances in comics.
Likewise. I always look forward to these. The next one will be on my channel.
Yes.
And just for those who don't know, we alternate between Roger's and mine with each one that we do, but we're not going to be doing parts 2 or 3 or that anymore. We'll kind of stick to about 20 or less issues, give you a really good understanding or deep dive to a certain extent of those issues, and then you can carry it on from that point forward. Yeah, if there are additional issues. So
you can take it from there. And just in case, you've been under a rock for the past few years and you're not subscribed to Bill, his link is in the description below. So make sure you do subscribe to him because he's got his top 100 romance comics, which is mind-blowing to me how he figured that one out. But
Jackson said lazy bums.
Lazy bums. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Crystal. Hey, Matt, great to see you. Nick, great to have you here. Jackson, Damian, Nawman, James, Shannon.
All the wonderful rascals and rascalettes that joined us.
All rascals and rascalettes, all our friends, which we love dearly. Thank you so much for coming out and supporting and watching us babble on for an hour and a half. And we'll do this again in a couple months. All right, everybody. Be kind to each other. Be blessed. Be back. And remember, Bill, we're taking over
the world, one comic book. I don't have a comic book at a time.
All right, guys. God bless. Bye.